So one of the things we wanted to talk about today that we kind of started to roll into, but we didn't get into all the way, is with the protests in Georgia and in the Georgia runoff, and the phone call from Trump to Georgia. So that was going to be one of our main discussion points today, before all of the protests and stuff happened. So I guess, Chris, if you want to start off, like, what were your thoughts? Did you listen to the whole call, or have you just heard some of the clips? And what are your thoughts on Trump's call to the Secretary of State of Georgia?
Yeah, I've listened to pieces of it. I haven't listened to the whole hour. I did follow other people who listened to the whole hour and tweeted out the important stuff, and so that was kind of nice because I just didn't have an hour to listen to the whole thing. But
yep, most people don't.
I did value, I realize this is biased, but Chris Murphy did a good job, our senator in Connecticut, a good job tweeting out like important excerpts of it that was like, hey, we probably should talk about this. The big things to me is like, yeah, super problematic that the comment of 11,700 votes. I really, that's pretty much just a stamp of like, yeah, we were trying to finesse some voter fraud. He was hoping that he was gonna get this backdoor deal. Like he's like, yeah, sure, I'll write up 11,700 votes. That should help out.
So I'll go next, and then Tim, you're the one who listened to the full thing. You can give us the center view on that. So as per the usual, for example, you watch Chris Murphy's Twitter thread, and I listened to Ben Shapiro's takes where he pulled out the quote unquote important excerpts and talked about it at great length. The problem is again, and this is a perfect example of the fact that reality has just a veritable cornucopia of facts, and you can take each fact that suits your narrative and then just kind of like take it and then set it over here and put it in a little picture frame, and then you have your narrative that Donald Trump wants to, commit voter fraud in Georgia to counter the voter fraud in Georgia, the alleged voter fraud in Georgia. So the important thing that you need to know, and I don't have too much to say on this, but the important thing that you need to know is that Trump saying, I need you to find me those 11,700 votes was following a very long phone call in which he said, here's where I think votes were stolen from me. I just need some of these votes. I want you to get me these votes. Right? And then when he got to that part of the call, he's like, again, like, here's hundreds of thousands of votes that I think I lost. Here's 10,000 here. Here's 10,000 here. This is what I think happened here. 20,000 here. I just need you to find me 11,700 votes because we won that state in a landslide. Right? Well, also, that's how that call went. And
he lost.
And that's the context.
11,000.
Right. Yes, 100%. We agree on that. And for anybody who doesn't agree on that, please leave a comment below. Seriously, I want to know why people actually still think it's a thing. I keep trying to look into this. I see some interesting stuff, but none of it verified. So if you have something that's convinced you there's voter fraud, please put it in the comments. I would love to see it, and we'll talk about it next week.
I did listen to parts of the call. Every single time that Trump said something like, well, there's this issue over here, the secretary was like, well, no, there's not actually an issue there, and let me tell you why there's not an issue. And so I was like, well, what about over there? And he's like, well, no, that's nothing there. Like, he's like,
what was it? Like, he was like, I heard Dominion's removing voting machines from the state or something like that. He's like, nope, no, they're not.
It's like, Mom,
are they removing parts? They're removing parts from it.
It's like, Mom, is there a monster in my bed? No, honey. He's like, well, it's in the closet now. No, honey, there's nothing in the closet either.
Sorry to my populist fans. I Trump's my bro, but
no, he can't be your bro anymore. He's all right. Nate, you gotta find a new bro. There's plenty of good ones out there, but Trump can't be a bro.
Yo, bro, you're my bro.
I'm your bro. There you go.
I have a podcast with you, not with Trump.
I'm not sure you can have Trump and Chris as your bro at the same time.
What?
No.
You gotta. I think move on from Trump. You know, there's gonna be some great other Republican leaders. You got that dude from Texas who's a nice guy, kind of causing some problems. But the one eye, the veteran.
Oh God, no.
By the way,
Oh,
before we go into Tim's expert analysis, Trump knows he lost. By the way, he's planning for it. Like everybody in his inner circle knows he's planning on running for 2024, which you can only do if you didn't get reelected. You know what I'm saying? Like
So
Trump's behind the scenes and in his I've read an article to this effect too. He knows he lost.
that's a perfect segue.
He doesn't
into my
agree
point.
with it, but he knows he's not going to be president.
Yeah. So, well, okay, that's a different thing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, my take, I listened to the whole hour thing. In general, one of the biggest questions is, like, can he be impeached because of that call? Yes, he can be. The fact of the matter is,
for anything. It's a political process.
Exactly. The fact of the matter is, there's a very wide spectrum of things that you can get impeached for, including getting a blowjob, right? So
yeah.
There's a lot of things that can happen to get you impeached. So yeah, he could be impeached for it. Will they go through the process to do it? Probably not. It's lame duck situation, whatever. But maybe just for the fact of being like, hey, you're the only president that got impeached twice.
They don't have time.
They still could. They can power through an impeachment or invoke
they
the
could.
amendment. They can invoke the 25th over this.
I guess.
But so over this call, the bottom line is, if somebody does end up charging him for this, I don't think they're going to win. I agree more along the sides of with Nate in that if you listen to the call, he seems to be, in my opinion at least, focused on trying to get what he thinks is election fraud out in the open, right? So he continuously says, yeah, but this was happening and this is why I already won. And even when he says, all we need is the 11,700 votes, just, that's all I want you to find, or that's all I want you to look into. He's still, it's in context. It really sounds like he's just saying, like, this is all that we need to investigate and figure out that these were enough that was defraudulent. And at that point, like, that's enough that the rest don't even matter because the result switches to what it should have been, right, in his mind. And so I don't think that you would be able to get a charge on this for the same reason that we talked about it a couple of podcasts ago, as far as why some of the Democrats and some of the Republicans weren't charged for other things, which is mens rea, or your mental state. You have to know and be willingly committing a crime. That is the part of this that he doesn't fit.
So what you're saying is that if he knew and could be proven that he knew that there was no election fraud and he was still asking for those,
then he would 100% be
right.
In my opinion, he would be 100% prosecuted and found guilty, right? So, but throughout the whole thing, it does sound like he truly believes there was election fraud. He continues to drive home those points. Now, he could just be smart enough to know that he needs to do that to avoid, the other thing, prosecution. So, with that said, the call, regardless of as if he thinks there's election fraud or not, is extremely embarrassing to him.
Oh yeah. There's a reason why it was a private call. God damn it.
It shows you how he approaches things, how he talks to people. He has zero regard for people that are involved or experts if they disagree with his opinion. He was talking about, and I forget the lady's name at this point, but there was a black lady in Georgia who I guess was supposedly seen like taking a briefcase of votes out from of ballots out from underneath something and scanning them 3 times. And then there's other videos of her where her daughter came and had lunch with her and they handed something off between each other, which I watched those videos and it looked like she just, like, her daughter came in, gave her lunch, they talked for a minute, and then she gave her daughter something, and it was probably money to pay for the lunch that her daughter just brought her.
Right. It certainly wasn't a stack of 30,000 ballots.
So everyone was calling it like a thumb drive or something. Like,
oh,
even if it was a thumb drive, like, who cares? It's a thumb drive.
Yeah, well,
regardless, right?
The votes were transferred off the machines via USBs, and that was some of the issues. When they did a recount, they found, I believe it was 2 thumb drives containing votes that hadn't been counted yet. So that would be why the Republicans are harping on that. Not saying they're right, but that would be why.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it looked like money, and they weren't like being suspicious. It didn't look crazy to me, but anyway. So
there's no reason to believe that that's.
But
money,
President Trump kept saying these things were happening. Like, he brought that lady's name up several times in this call. It wasn't one of the things that you see on most of the media because it doesn't have the same impact as find me 11,000 votes. But he brought that up too. And it really, to me, shows like he believes, I think, or even if he doesn't, is trying to convince other people that this information that he sees on what he called Trump media, Trump news, right? Somebody said, the social media news, and he's like, it's not social media, it's Trump media. I don't watch social media. Social media is garbage. I got this off of Trump media, right? Is what he said on his call. Like
OAN, Fox, whatever, whoever's, favorable to him.
Yeah. And so, no, it's still social media. It's like on his Facebook feeds or his Twitter stuff. Like, he's getting it on social media, but he calls it Trump media because it's the stuff he believes in.
Well, he watches news.
I know he does, but that's not where this particular one sounded like it came from in that talk.
Could be. Yep.
So, at the end of the day, I don't think he can be prosecuted. I think it's extremely embarrassing. It shows that he, doesn't listen to people. Another one, you brought it up. He was talking about the Dominion machines. He says, yeah, Dominion's taking the machines out. They're removing the machines. And he said, and I forget the guy's name, the legal representative for the secretary, Gary. Sorry, I forget his name. But anyway, he says, are they removing that? And the guy says, no, they're not. They're not removing any machines. And before he can finish his line, Trump interrupts him, very loud and boisterous, as Trump does, right? He says, no, I mean, but they're removing all the internals, right? They're removing all the internals, aren't they? They're doing that. You know they're doing that, right? He goes, no, they're not, Mr. President.
Yeah, I think for the second time, I think he was just like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was it.
It's just, and
I think, I don't know, Chris, I mean, you didn't hear too much of it, but I was thinking, and once like Trump is 100% in the wrong because he's just incorrect in general, right? So not disputing that. I was kind of wondering why the Georgia, was he Secretary of State?
Yeah.
I think. I was wondering why he wasn't elaborating more. Like, he has Trump on the line. Why? Oh, did he?
Yeah. He tried multiple times. Trump would say these
so
things.
He went into the details like we looked into that. This is what we found when we looked into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on many occasions. Now, there was a couple where they said, yeah, we'll have to look into that more, but we found no evidence, right? There was a couple where they had that answer.
Yeah.
But for the most part, whenever Trump would come out and say something, they didn't interrupt him, right? They let him finish, which took up almost all of the call. Trump just rambling on and on about bullshit. And then when finally there'd be a pause, they'd come out and say, no, Mr. President, we only found, we investigated that. We had, blah, 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 investigate, and we found 2 cases. And he would just say, well, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's like they're holding.
My sources say, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. I think people are still holding on to like that sense of decency or longing for it. It's like, okay, Mr. President, like obviously it's just such an absurd conceptual phone call in the first place. It's like if Nate, I called you about trying to purchase meth, and then you're like, Chris, you're my really good friend, but I'm just going to tell you that meth is not a good thing to ingest into your body. You're not going to be like, Chris, why the fuck are you calling me about meth? Right? But that's what I feel like it's going on right now. Like, well, Mr. President, you can't do crystal meth. It's just you're an elected official. It's like we're trying to hold on to some sense of deference here and order and whatnot, and it's just such an absurd dynamic. How do you even adjust to a phone call from the U.S. president? No, you're wrong. Like, how do you adjust to that? How do you even accommodate that in a phone call?
It's kind of a dick move to, speaking of decorum, to release the call. Do you disagree?
Well, he talked about that. There's an interview with him. You can go and find it where he basically says, after that call, Trump tweeted and said, I had a call with the Secretary of State, whatever his name is, and he had no answer, no information, no blah, blah about all these different voter election issues.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
And so he actually came out and said, if Trump wouldn't have sent that tweet, I would have kept quiet. But I'm going to put this out there if he's going to throw me under the bus like that, basically.
Yeah, fair enough.
Also, this is something I think too. This is out of the typical like cadence of political inciting, but all phone calls from the president's office are archived. Like every single call is recorded. It may not be declassified ever, and that's included on state officially. The governor, like Connecticut governor, anything Lamont does, Secretary of State, that type of stuff, it's recorded. So it's not like Trump was going into this phone call not knowing he was being recorded. It's pretty much a given at the job at this point. And with that, it's public record. Someone could have just avoided the call just as easily.
There's like 7 or 8 people on the call too. In the very beginning of the call, which you guys probably didn't hear because it was not going to be in an important clip. They named like the guys like this like, and on the call is blah 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 and blah 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 and blah 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 and blah 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 and blah blah blah, and you're like, oh my god.
So no laws are broken at all. Like it was fair game to release it. I mean, and even if they didn't, again, someone could have just as easily filed an FOI for it, like a Freedom of Information Act.
Are you sure about that?
Pretty sure. And then no laws.
I'm thinking FOIAs on presidential calls has got to be probably.
Dude, I seriously think it would be the most entertaining thing in the world, at least for a while, if some future president just releases all of Trump's phone calls.
I hope they do.